So this is Mr. Evans, and this is my model that I've created to show what's happening with the Anolis or Nolly lizards on the Turks and Caicos. You can see from my model I've created two variants of the lizard. The lizard that was seen prior to the hurricanes, which you can see from its body is slightly bigger, and it had much bigger legs at the back. And it was generally a bigger lizard. And then I've also created a model of the smaller variant of lizard with much bigger hands with more areas to grip as well. So this is the lizard that was predominantly found after Hurricane Irma. These lizards live on small islands called the Turks and Caicos, which are near the Bahamas, and they live in a natural semi-jungle kind of habitat where they live on trees. What you can see from natural variation between these two lizards is that just by various mutations and slight differences in phenotype, some of these lizards had slightly bigger hands, and they were slightly smaller in their body. Now, prior to the hurricane, this meant that it didn't really have any difference between the two, but when the recent hurricanes hit, it meant that these smaller lizards were able to hold on to trees more strongly than the bigger, heavier lizards with smaller hands. And as a result, these bigger lizards blew away and died, and these smaller lizards survived and continue to breed. So what I've done with my model is I've shown with the model here, I've put deliberately larger hands on my model to indicate the bigger hands and the better grip, and I've put deliberately smaller hands on the bigger previous lizard. This is the Conair 1875 hairdryer. It's an excellent hairdryer, but for the purposes of my model, it's now Hurricane Irma. So what I want to do is just show you with my model and my video what happens. So if I simulate my hurricane now, the first thing you can see on my broom handle that is simulating a tree is that the bigger lizards tend to blow around a lot more than the smaller lizards. And you can see the smaller lizard's a bit more streamlined. It doesn't billow about left and right quite so much. But as I up the wind, hopefully we'll see that the bigger lizard moves around a lot more. The smaller lizard's still not moving very much. And then as time goes on and the hurricane continues, hopefully, he said, you can see that one hand's now come off on this lizard and now that lizard's blown away. So there you go, fantastic bit of modelling there. Hopefully you could hear me through that noise. So what you can see there is that the bigger lizard couldn't hold on as easily and was blowing around a lot more, and that the smaller lizard was much more solid because it had a bigger surface area to grip onto the tree, which in the case of this was just a brush that I've modelled with my model. But there you go, that gives you a bit of an example. You can see that there's suggestions that with climate change we're getting more and more hurricanes in more recent times, and therefore these strong wind events are happening more frequently, and therefore there's a bigger chance that you're going to end up with just these lizards with the bigger hands and the smaller bodies. And then the final question it's really asking for this was you know, what would happen in the future if this continued? And if this continued and we had even stronger winds, you could predict that it's possible these lizards would even get even smaller and their hands would get even bigger as a result, because they would be the only ones that would survive and be able to hold on to a tree. From citing my sources, well, I created the website, but it was a fantastic YouTube video that showed how this happened and how the science was done. And I think it was an article in the Scientific American as well that I found to just talk about this. So there you go, that's my video. And I hope that gives you an idea of how I use my model and my video for this.